Welcome to our second program in what we hope may be a series on philanthropy. The first, which you can see in the Dover-Sherburne Cable Archives or on YouTube, was called An Introduction to Philanthropy, and it covered two basic subjects. The first was what the word means, and the second was a brief look at its history to see what its influence has been in the West. That contained two generally unknown facts. First, it does not mean the love of mankind or rich people helping poor people. What it meant originally was the love of what it is to be human, love in the sense of cherishing, developing, nurturing our humanity. The second major point, which also generally unknown, is that it was a major influence on the American Revolution and the formation of our government. At both practical level, voluntary associations created the American Revolution, the Minutemen, Revolutionary Army for that matter, writers of the Declaration of Independence. And the second was that at the conceptual level, it governed the ideals behind this country. Hamilton said in the First Federalist that the ability to design our own government is a gift to mankind, which adds the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism. And what he meant was not rich people helping poor people, it was that this country was intended to be a philanthropic nation. That is, we were a gift to mankind intended to improve the human condition. So that's an ideal we can all bear in mind. Now we know that today America is the most philanthropic nation on earth. Nobody questions that. And our subject today is charitable giving. And for this we have an expert, Michelle Middleman, longtime resident of Dover. I think you moved here in 1985, who has with her family foundation, the Michelle and David Middleman Family Foundation, been engaging in philanthropy at local, regional, and national levels for some time now with their children. So what we want to talk about today is charitable giving, how it's done, why it's done, what attracts people to it. And when we say giving, we mean both giving financial support and volunteering, giving of time. Second, we want to focus in particularly on family philanthropy, in which Michelle is an expert. Let's begin perhaps with some numbers, just to give you a sense of where American philanthropy in Massachusetts and philanthropy in Dover and Sherburne stacks up. As you can see from the numbers that I think you're going to get on your screen, in the United States, these are the most recent numbers available, and they were put together by the Chronicle of Philanthropy, which is the weekly trade newspaper of the profession. And they were published just last August. And they attempted to relate disposable income after taxes, after mortgage and food and necessary expenses, with itemized charitable deductions, which is not all taxpayers, but it's a large number. It's a huge body of data. And they did this down to the zip code level. So you can go to the Chronicle of Philanthropy's website and see where any zip code area in the country stacks up. Now, nationwide, Americans give 4.7% of their disposable income to philanthropy in one form or another. Most of that is church, religious giving, or education or health. Massachusetts and New England generally lag farther behind the rest of the country. This study that they did ranked the states, and the bottom 6 states are New England states. Massachusetts is 47th, and yet New England is the wealthiest region in the country. Now, why should that be, that the wealthiest region in the country is lagging behind the rest of the country in charitable giving? Massachusetts residents are giving 2.8% of their disposable income to philanthropy, considerably behind the national average of 4.7%. And in Dover and Sherburne, the numbers show us that we're ahead of Massachusetts, as one would hope, and we're giving Sherburne 3.8% and Dover 3.7%. So we're very close together. And that's often the case, that contiguous areas have similar cultures of philanthropy. I've also attached the numbers for a number of neighboring towns for your general interest. We're not going to spend much time on these numbers, but I just wanted to provide a kind of hard data with no funny work about statistics or anything. This is just the data out of the IRS and the Census Bureau about charitable giving in America. So it gives you a frame of reference in which to think about your own philanthropy and our community's philanthropy. Now, we want to get right to the subject of giving at the practical, down-to-earth level. And I said Michelle Middleman is an expert. So I'd like to begin with a question, Michelle. What can you tell us about how your family got involved in philanthropy, why you're attracted to it, why you do it?
Well, first of all, I don't consider myself an expert.
No, of course not.
But I think that people participate in philanthropy for many different reasons. On one level, it's really about people giving back to fulfill a deep need to help others and to find deeper meaning in life. Within our family, I think that there's a sensibility and interpretation of that on a different level where we are all connected, that each one of us, in terms of we're connected within our families, our communities, our local, national, global levels, and that there is a responsibility and we find deeper meaning in terms of self-awareness by connecting to those. People in general get involved in any number of those levels because there's a desire to alter or change a present condition, to be able to create something different, to be able to celebrate something existing. But all of it, I think that there's a belief and a value of beginning to understand yourself much more and bringing the best that you can to a table to collaborate and work with others.
And in that sense, you're being quite consistent with the Founding Fathers' notion that philanthropy is a way that we define our character and our values. That is, your family has values of community and of obligation and accountability to the community, and you're exercising that in giving and volunteering. Now, you've been very active in health philanthropy, health issues, owing to your background as professionally as a nurse. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I'd like to just go back to something you just said, I think, because it's very important distinction and something that we have held really a value highly, and that is in terms, and I think you mentioned it a bit, in terms of philanthropy isn't about financial resources just alone. It's about giving of time. So it's time and our money. And that that's an important piece to it. Piece to it. Our philanthropy in healthcare is based on a value of health and wellness being something, a right that we believe that everyone should have, and that we can support that in terms of our time and effort.
And that's an ideal that the Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has said that every human being on earth has a right to a healthy and productive life. Now, you know a great deal about the issues in the fields, and that, I think, is a useful example that people generally give to what they know, and they start where they're comfortable and knowledgeable, and they try to identify among the fields of philanthropy where they can do the most good, the most knowledgeable, informed giving of their time and resources. there are in philanthropy about 200 fields in which charities operate. And they're grouped around three basic fields which identify our relations with the rest of the world. Nature, our relations to our environment; culture, our relations to what humans have made and thought, mainly in arts and education; and finally, people, that is, our relations with our fellow human beings. And those branch out logically into, as I say, over 200 different fields. Now, there are in Massachusetts about 4,000 authentically philanthropic nonprofits. People generally think that a nonprofit is philanthropy. It's not. And the current political discussion about 501c4s, social welfare groups, and their politicization illustrates that. But of the 4,000 active, indubitably philanthropy charities in Massachusetts, we have found them in every single field. So no matter if you want to identify your values, who you are as a person, you can go to our website, philanthropicdirectory.org, and see a taxonomic tree of all the fields of philanthropy. And in there, no matter who you are, no matter what your interests are, no matter what your values are, you will find charities that are just like you and that you will enjoy supporting because they're just like you. Now, Michelle brings to her philanthropy some technical expertise. She is very well aware of the latest developments in nursing, in integrative medicine in particular, which is a special interest of yours. And so you can focus your giving within a huge field, healthcare, on where you think you can do the most good. Do you have any stories to share about how you think your giving has been effective?
Yes, actually.
This is unrehearsed.
Right.
She didn't expect that question.
Well, I think, first of all, you said something that was really important, that people gravitate to the areas that they are, something that really rings true to them, something that they have a deep connection to, whether it's something that, an occurrence in their life, a family issue, or something that they might read in the paper and they can relate to in terms of an experience. My background in nursing really, and my desire to work in philanthropy was gave me the opportunity to go back to my roots in nursing. One area that we get involved on a national level is the Bravewell Collaborative, which promotes integrative medicine on a national level.
And what's integrative medicine?
Integrative medicine is where you bring the best of conventional medicine, which we are all familiar with complementary care. So it is based on the belief of a relationship between a provider and a patient.
Wow.
It is patient-centered. It brings the best of what evidence supports in terms of research to the table.
From all the world traditions.
From, well, in this country, it's mostly, it is global in terms of bringing that best, but now with global technology, we'll be able to do that even more in terms of really being able to tap into best practices globally. But within this country, there's a very strong following now, and we're at a tipping point in terms of people really being able to embrace integrative medicine and have access to it.
And I should say that Michelle is the nursing editor for a journal, the Global Advances in Health and Medical Care, is it?
I'm a co-founder and editor of Global Advances in Health and Medicine.
So she's promoting the field herself with her time, as well as supporting it through the charities that support it. Now I want to switch over a little bit to family philanthropy, because you've been very active in that. Could you tell us a little bit about how you see what the values of family philanthropy are, doing philanthropy together with your kids?
I think that in parenting, we often consider what values do we want to pass on to our children. And when that becomes a conscious effort to sort of define, we want our children to be honest. We want them to be educated. We want them to have freedom. We want them to be a part of the community. We want them to hold family as important. And philanthropy, in terms of exploring those and putting our time and our resources in that, enables us to more adequately define our values. And so within our family, we, when the children were younger, the catalog for philanthropy was a wonderful resource, because the images were so absolutely beautiful, and they would sit down and often skim through the pages and be attracted to different things.
Oh, good.
And they often found at a young age that they were attracted to either nature or children, and their philanthropy and their time invested in what they think in terms of valuable has grown and explored many different areas.
So now they're in other fields that are more mature, you think, the decisions they're making, reflecting who they are?
Yes, absolutely. And it's been nice because I think that perhaps it was those original explorations when they were younger and somewhat defining what was important to them.
At what age did you start working with them in philanthropy? Their age.
Well, I hesitate in bringing personal examples into here, but when our children were very young, at the age of 5 and 6, 7,
Wow.
they were out with a lemonade stand.
That's good.
And knew that where those dimes went was going to help someone else. So,
and I think that reflects broad experience. In the catalog, we've talked with thousands of donors about their giving, and 5 or 6, when they begin going to school, is a good time to begin. It's very formative in terms of their ideas about things. They even have ideas. And they do respond to things like pictures. In the first catalog, we were supporting the New England Assistant Dog Services, and there was just a wonderful picture of 10 dogs sitting on steps at graduation from their training with their leashes down, and wonderful expressions on the dogs' faces. We put that in the first catalog, and that charity earned more dollars than any other charity in the catalog. And why? Because people told us, oh, the kids loved the dogs. When they asked their kids what charity they wanted to support, they said the dogs, the dogs. So it really evoked feelings beyond themselves of that they could help in a way that didn't involve themselves. It was a way that they had. It was kind of their education in values.
Well, again, I think that it's also a connection and an expression of what they personally relate to. And so the children that are out there playing football or soccer or baseball, at the end of the season when they outgrow their sneakers, they're thinking about what can they do with them?
That's terrific.
Or how can they teach other people on the field what they may have already learned? And the benefits of that being so much more enjoyable than to them accomplishing something on their own.
That's a wonderful example, and there are charities all across the state that take used children's equipment in good shape, equipment, clothes, whatever, and distribute it, recycle it to people who need it. It's a good example of charities responding to felt needs. Sometimes you hear that there are too many charities. This is, in our experience, absolutely not true. Charities that might seem the same on paper seem much different when you talk to the individuals behind them. I asked one of our charity heads who ran a teenage inner-city basketball program, how many after-school basketball programs are there in the city of Boston? And he said they're like apples on the tree. You can't count them all. And I said, well, are they duplicative? Well, you know, do they compete with each other? He said, absolutely not. What happens is that somebody from a neighborhood goes to college, plays basketball, returns to the neighborhood to give kids a leg up on all kinds of things, their education, their character development, their sportsmanship, whatever. And each one reflects the values of the person who started. So every one of those, although they might, oh, it's a teenage basketball program, they're not all alike. They're all different. So when you hear that there are too many charities, doubt the person. It's just not true. Now, we've touched a little bit on how philanthropy can be an educator, a teacher of values. It doesn't tell you what your values should be. It asks you to define what your values are and then to find charities that reflect those values, and there will always be charities that do. But in that sense, in the sense of being value intensive, philanthropy goes beyond what, and particularly in popular involvement in philanthropy, what schools and politicians and the Supreme Court and you know, the teachers, churches even, the teachers of values in our society, and the more broadly influential philanthropy is, I believe it has a shot at becoming our nation's school for values. That it helps us to identify what our values are. It helps us to strengthen our values through exercise of them in giving and volunteering. And in that way, we discover who we are as individuals. And in that sense, engaging in philanthropy is loving, developing, nourishing, cherishing what it is to be human. So among all nonprofits, philanthropy is maybe 10% of nonprofits, but it's the most value-intensive portion of the nonprofit field. And it is where people continue their education, beyond formal education, beyond schools and colleges and whatever. Philanthropy asks people who they are and whether they'd like to test and experience their values in action in the real world. And in that sense, it builds character so that people, and getting back to families, when a family sits down around a kitchen table and, you know, goes through the catalog for philanthropy or talks about what they'd like to support this year, each member of that family is seeing the other members at their finest. This is who these people are. Now, it's great for kids to see parents at their finest. It's also good for parents to see children at their finest, thinking not about themselves, but thinking about what benefits they might influence in the world, thinking about making a difference in the world. Do you find that donors today are thinking more about impact than they are about what? About moral obligation to give? Do you find that at all in talking to people?
I think that philanthropy hasn't moved forward and is still perhaps considered a moral obligation rather than a self-discovery. There are many parents in Dover and Sherburne that I've really admired over the years that their children come up with an idea. They say, I'd like to make bracelets for those children over in some country in Africa. And rather than say, gosh, that's not such a great idea, that just the exploration of that, and just how would you do that? Who could you get involved in doing that? How would you send them there? What do you want to accomplish by doing that? How can you communicate with them? That process brings, encourages skill development, reinforces self-esteem, and they're accountable. They become accountable for something that is much different than being accountable for something in school. It's something they are creating. So it's the process.
I like your phrase, self-discovery. I think that's absolutely right on. There's now a paradigm shift in philanthropy from the 20th century, which was Michelle was talking about, where giving away, giving back to the third sector, to the disadvantaged, to blah, 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 all these negatives. Why should you do that? Because it's a moral obligation. And often at the end of your life, you know, as you're preparing to meet your maker. Now there's been a demographic shift in philanthropy where younger wealth creators are coming into philanthropy with a lot of money from the high-tech economy. And they have changed the whole discussions about philanthropy so that basically they didn't buy this business about giving back. They didn't, you know, what do you mean giving back? Nobody gave me what I have today. I worked for 10 years, 14 hours a day, you know, and I made it fair and square. Now I want to say, what's next in my life? We've made more money in our family than we ever dreamed of. And, you know, is this all there is? They're still parenting. They're still in their 30s and 40s, sometimes 20s. And they know they want to teach their kids values. So they turn to philanthropy, and many, I'm sure everybody knows of examples of this, or very prominent examples, starting with Bill Gates, of people who have done that, and they find that they're bringing to philanthropy the skills that they had in business. That is, they're quantifiers, they're measurers, and they're interested in return on investment, not to themselves, but in terms of philanthropic satisfaction, the donor satisfaction. So the culture of philanthropy is changing. Michelle is right that it's not quite, the whole of philanthropy hasn't caught up to the leading edge, but it is inevitable that this is going to happen. So there's a new world of philanthropy out there, which is different probably from what you've been taught about philanthropy, aside from this very program. And we're grateful to Dover Sherburne Cable Television for allowing us to do this series. If you're interested in more programs about philanthropy, let somebody know, either at Dover Sherburne Cable, or me at the Catalog for Philanthropy, or Michelle, if you happen to know Michelle, or go to YouTube and watch the rebroadcasts. We'll get a sense of some feedback and of some interest. We hope you've enjoyed this discussion and benefited from it. We thank you for listening.